What is political economy? Political economy studies the relationship between economics, politics, and society. It's about understanding how power dynamics shape our economic systems and, in turn, how those systems influence our lives. Imagine a complex machine with interconnected gears, levers, and pulleys. That's political economy. Instead of nuts and bolts, we're talking about things like government policies, labour markets, and international trade. These elements interact in intricate ways, influencing everything from the price of your morning coffee to the quality of healthcare you receive. Political economy helps us make sense of this complexity, providing a framework for analysing how these systems work and their impact on our daily lives. By understanding political economy, we gain a powerful lens through which to view the world around us. It empowers us to ask critical questions about how our societies are structured, who benefits from the current system, and what alternatives might exist. Why should we care? Relevance in everyday life. I bet you didn't know how much political economy affects your daily life. Political economy might seem like a dense academic subject, but its relevance extends far beyond the ivory tower. It's about understanding the forces that shape our everyday lives, from the price of groceries to the availability of jobs. Think of it like this. Political economy is the invisible hand behind the scenes, influencing everything from the quality of your education to the cost of your healthcare. Understanding political economy helps us decipher the motivations and consequences of these policies, empowering us to engage in informed civic discourse and advocate for changes that benefit society as a whole. By recognizing the interconnectedness of politics, economics, and society, we can start to imagine and build a world that works for everyone. Foundational concepts. I don't think people understand how crucial foundational concepts are in political economy. Before we delve into the intricate workings of political economy, let's establish some foundational concepts that will guide our exploration. First and foremost, we must recognize that political economy is inherently interdisciplinary. It draws upon insights from economics, political science, sociology, history, and even philosophy to provide a holistic understanding of how societies are organized. Another key concept is power. Political economy recognizes that power is not evenly distributed in society. It is concentrated in the hands of certain groups or institutions. Finally, political economy emphasizes the historical and contextual nature of economic systems. By studying history and understanding the evolution of economic systems, we gain a deeper appreciation for the possibilities and limitations of change in the present. You need to watch this if you struggle with understanding the roots of modern political economy. Our journey into political economy begins with a figure who looms large over the field, Karl Marx. Born in 1818, Marx lived during a period of rapid industrialization, witnessing firsthand the growing disparities between factory owners and workers. Marx dedicated himself to understanding how capitalism worked, not just as an economic system, but as a force that shaped power dynamics, social relations, and even human consciousness. He argued that to understand society, you had to understand its economic base. Think of it like a building. The economy is the foundation, and everything else, from politics to culture, is built upon. Is follow to that. Marx believed that capitalism, with its inherent contradictions and inequalities, was inherently unstable and would eventually be overthrown by the very class it exploited, the workers. Section 2, Labour pains the labour theory of value. I don't think people understand the true essence of the labour theory of value. At the heart of Marx's critique of capitalism lies his labour theory of value. This theory boils down to a simple idea. The value of a good or service is ultimately determined by the amount of labour that goes into producing it. Marx argued that under capitalism, workers are alienated from the fruits of their labour. They pour their time and energy into creating products, but the profits from those products are siphoned off by the capitalists and who own the means of production. The workers who create the actual value receive only a small portion of it in the form of wages, while the capitalists who own the means of production reap the lion's share of the profits. This exploitation, Marx believed, was the source of the inherent conflict between the capitalist class and the working class. Marx would counter that capital itself is accumulated labour, extracted from previous cycles of production. In essence, the capitalist class is built upon the backs of the working class, appropriating the value they create. You need to hear this if you're a worker. Section 3. Class warfare. The bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Marx's analysis of capitalism hinges on understanding the dynamics between different social classes. He argued that capitalist society is fundamentally divided into two main classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisie are the owners of capital, the factory owners, the landlords, the folks holding the purse strings of production. They control the means of production and, by extension, the means of generating wealth. On the other side are the proletariat. These are the workers, the ones who sell their labour to the bourgeoisie in exchange for wages. They own little to no capital and depend on the bourgeoisie for their livelihoods. This conflict isn't just some theoretical abstraction. It plays out in the real world through things like labour strikes, unionisation efforts, and even political revolutions. You need to hear this if you're a student of political economy. Section 4. The tools of oppression, means of production. Central to Marx's analysis is the concept of the means of production. This refers to everything needed to produce goods and services, from raw materials and land to factories, tools, and increasingly, in our digital age, information and technology. Marx argued that in a capitalist society, the means of production are privately owned by the bourgeoisie. This ownership, he believed, is the very source of their power and the root of the proletariat's exploitation. Whether it's a factory producing textiles, a mine extracting minerals, or a tech company developing software, the ownership of the means of production gives the bourgeoisie disproportionate power over the proletariat. This power imbalance, Marx believed, is the source of many of the social ills he observed, from widespread inequality and poverty to alienation and a lack of worker control over their own destinies. I bet you didn't know how neoliberalism emerged as a counter-revolution to Marxist ideas. Having explored the foundations of Marxist political economy, let's turn our attention to a more recent phenomenon, neoliberalism. Emerging in the latter half of the 20th century, neoliberalism can be seen as a kind of counter-revolution against the ideas of Marx and the social democratic policies that gained traction after World War II. At its core, neoliberalism champions the free market as the ultimate arbiter of social and economic life. It promotes policies aimed at shrinking the role of the state, deregulating industries, privatizing public services, and emphasizing individual responsibility over collective action. From a Marxist perspective, however, neoliberalism appears less like a path to prosperity and more like a sophisticated strategy for restoring and consolidating elite power. What's something people don't know about deregulation? One of the cornerstones of neoliberal ideology is the belief in the inherent efficiency and justice of the free market. Neoliberals advocate for deregulation, the removal of government rules and regulations that they believe stifle innovation and economic growth. They argue that by getting the government out of the way, businesses will thrive, competition will flourish, and the benefits will trickle down to everyone. However, from a Marxist perspective, deregulation often looks less like unleashing the power of the market and more like rigging the game in favor of the powerful. When regulations on industries like finance, energy, or pharmaceuticals are loosened, it's often the corporations with their vast resources and political influence that benefit most. Marxists argue that true freedom in a market economy requires a level playing field with robust regulations that protect the public interest and ensure fair competition. Why are there not more people talking about privatization? Privatization is the transfer of publicly owned assets and services to private corporations. Neoliberals argue that private companies are more efficient and innovative, leading to lower costs and better quality, from healthcare and education to transportation. Privatization is a hallmark of neoliberal policies. Marxists see privatization as a fire sale of the commons, transferring essential services to the private sphere. When services like healthcare or education are privatized, access is often determined by ability to pay. This can create a two-tiered system, exacerbating existing inequalities. Privatization can undermine democratic control over essential services. Corporations are accountable to shareholders, not the public, leading to less transparency and accountability. I bet you didn't know how austerity measures impact everyday lives. Section 4. Austerity measures. Tightening the belt, loosening the safety net. In economic crises, proponents of neoliberalism often push for austerity. This involves cutting government spending, raising taxes, and reducing social welfare programs. Neoliberals argue these measures restore economic confidence and attract investment. From a Marxist perspective, austerity is class warfare from above. It disproportionately impacts the working class and the poor. Think of it like tightening everyone's belt, even though some are already struggling. Austerity can lead to increased poverty and a widening gap between rich and poor. Why are there not more people talking about neoliberalism on a world stage? Neoliberalism is a global phenomenon, shaping international trade, finance, and development. Through institutions like the World Bank, IMF, and WTO, neoliberal policies are enforced worldwide, often harming developing countries. Marxists see this as a new wave of imperialism, sophisticated and insidious. Free trade agreements favor wealthy nations, and structural adjustment programs impose neoliberal policies. Encouraging free capital flow benefits the wealthy. Global neoliberalism perpetuates economic dependency. It's like a global casino where the house always wins. Developing countries compete on an uneven playing field with limited access to capital, technology, and markets. They open their economies to foreign investment, often at the cost of local industries and labour rights. Marxists argue for restructuring the global economic order for true justice. I don't think people understand the true impact of neoliberalism. Section 6. A Marxist critique, unmasking the neoliberal agenda. Neoliberalism is seen as a project aimed at restoring elite power under the guise of free markets and individual liberty. Marxists argue it shifts power from labour to capital, exacerbating inequalities and undermining democracy. Promoting deregulation, privatization and austerity, neoliberalism prioritizes profit over people and the planet. The challenges of our time are seen as predictable outcomes of a system rigged in favor of the few. Understanding this critique is about recognizing capitalism's contradictions and injustices. It's about engaging in critical analysis and collective action for a just and sustainable future. You need to hear this if you're a worker in today's economy. As we've journeyed from the factories of Marx's time to the globalized, digitally driven economies of today, one thing remains strikingly clear. The struggle between those who control the means of production and those who rely on selling their labor is far from over. While the battle lines may have shifted, the fundamental tension between capital and labor persists, shaping the political, social, and economic realities of our time. Reclaiming the commons. This is why you need to understand the power of shared resources. One of the most insidious aspects of neoliberalism has been its relentless push to commodify everything, bringing even the most essential aspects of life under the domain of the market. From healthcare and education to water and even clean air, the logic of profit maximization has infiltrated nearly every sphere of human existence. This commodification of life itself, however, is not inevitable. It's a political choice. Marx's emphasis on the social nature of production offers a powerful antidote to the individualistic ethos of neoliberalism. By recognizing that our well-being is interconnected and that we rely on a shared commons, from natural resources to public infrastructure, we can begin to imagine and build alternatives to the market-driven logic that dominates our world. This involves reclaiming the commons, those shared spaces and resources that should be governed by and for the benefit of all, not subject to the whims of private profit. From community-owned renewable energy projects to worker cooperatives that prioritize democratic decision-making, the seeds of a more just and equitable future are being sown around the world. I don't think people understand the full implications of our current economic crises. Marx famously predicted that capitalism, with its inherent contradictions and crises, would eventually sow the seeds of its own destruction. While we're still a long way from witnessing the complete demise of capitalism, the system's penchant for crisis remains a defining feature of our times. From the global financial crisis of 2008 to the ongoing climate emergency, the inherent instability and unsustainability of our current economic model are becoming increasingly apparent. Yet, within these crises lie opportunities for transformation. The COVID-19 pandemic, for example, has exposed the fragility of global supply chains, the inadequacy of social safety nets, and the deep inequalities that plague our societies. It has also demonstrated the essential role of government in providing public goods, protecting workers, and ensuring the well-being of all. The question now is whether we will learn from these crises, recognizing the need for systemic change, or whether we will simply revert to the status quo, perpetuating the very conditions that led to these crises in the first place. Section 4. Navigating the labyrinth towards a just and sustainable future. I don't think people understand the complexity of achieving a just and sustainable future. The path towards a more just and sustainable future is rarely straightforward. There are no easy answers, no silver bullets that will magically solve the complex challenges we face. The insights of political economy, however, provide us with a compass to navigate the labyrinth, a framework for understanding the root causes of our current predicament and for imagining alternative futures. This involves moving beyond the narrow confines of market-based solutions, recognizing the limitations of individualistic approaches, and embracing the power of collective action. It requires challenging the dominant narratives that perpetuate inequality and exploitation, and instead amplifying the voices of those most marginalized and most affected by the injustices of our current system. From building solidarity across borders to demanding a just transition to a renewable energy economy, the path forward requires a fundamental shift in our values, priorities, and systems of governance. It demands that we move beyond the pursuit of endless economic growth on a finite planet and embrace a more holistic vision of well-being, one that prioritizes social justice, ecological sustainability, and the flourishing of all life.